What would you like? What have you been thinking about these days? What is your favorite thing to think about?
I have come to realize now that our problem fundamentally is that we've changed in our relationship with the biosphere. For 95% of human existence, we were nomadic hunter gatherers. I mean, that's how we evolved. And we carried everything we owned on our backs, following animals and plants through the seasons on their migrations. When you live that way, you understand that your very survival and well being depend on a web of relationships with other animal species and plants, with the air, water, soil, and sunlight. That's been the understanding of humanity for the vast bulk of our existence. That's called an ecocentric way of seeing our place. We know that we're, and in that kind of a perspective, and I've watched it in indigenous communities around the world. They celebrate and give thanks to their creator for for nature's abundance. And there is a reciprocality there that says we have to act properly in order to ensure that you can continue to be as generous. But we've shifted over the last 1,000 years. We've undergone this shift. And I think it begins with the religions that begin to say, oh, we're special. We're different. We're not like the rest of creation. We're special. And then when you get the Renaissance and you get, Francis Bacon and Rene Descartes and Isaac Newton, all beginning to celebrate the brain, the mind, science, this knowledge. We really are, that's what's all we're all about. And with the Industrial Revolution, what we see is we're so smart. We don't have to live within natural law. I mean, we can now fly faster than the speed of sound. We can live underwater. We can pierce the Earth's crust. We can escape gravity, for God's sake, and live in outer space. So we've really come to think this whole thing is about us. We've taken over the planet. We've transformed the nature of the planet. And so even environmentalists, well, we have to be a little more careful, but we still see ourselves as the dominant animal. If this is an anthropocentric way of seeing, and I think it's deeply embedded now because the systems that we've developed to govern and regulate ourselves, from religion to the law to the economy to our politics, are all anthropocentric. It's all about us. I don't know if you saw recently, last month, Partha Dasgupta published a tome saying, the problem with this economic system is we left out nature. Like nature is an externality. What the hell? And we think we're so goddamn smart. Like, this is crazy. And, right now we're celebrating in Canada that a river in Quebec, the Magpie River, has been given personhood and this is not the first time. We had the Vilcabamba in Ecuador. So what I'm saying is the problem is since the systems that we live within are all about us, then they're rigged. The games are rigged. And so even when you hear a politician, going, oh, I care, we got to do something about the environment, but they always will say, well, we've got to worry about jobs and we've got to worry about the corporations and their ability to survive. And so we talk about climate change. Fossil fuel industry is always right in there in any discussion. Wait a minute now. This is so we've if we don't rediscover our embeddedness, and what I keep saying is, for the last 40 years, I've been working with indigenous people, and they've still got it. We don't. When you look at what happened in Standing Rock, what was that about? It wasn't about money. It was about people saying water is is life, and we're trying to protect water. In New Brunswick, we had people in Elsie Bucktalk fighting against fracking. Again, they're saying you're destroying our water system. It's about our relationship with the earth that indigenous people still have. Of course, the world has changed enormously since indigenous people evolved, and they don't have all the solutions, but they have the perspective within which we have to apply the solutions. And so I look very much to supporting indigenous people to get sovereignty over the land so they can help us learn how to care for it.
Oh, I love that. You know, we've been following and a lot of it's been informed by working with you in the past and looking at your work and being formed by Janine Benyus and Tom Lindsay with Nature, you know, all that. And if you pull it all together, exactly, we need to allow First Nations to take over 50% of the Earth's of the planet so that they can guide it and protect it, right? Because I know that the nature needs half movement is really important. And I think that there's also something about respect in that part of where our technology would be improved is if we sublimated the structure of tech inside the Earth's operating instructions.
Yeah. Janine, there's no question we're going to need technological solutions, but Janine really provides us with an understanding. Yeah, we're smart, but we do things within a very limited perspective and time frame. But if you look at nature, for 4 billion years, species have evolved ways of dealing with our excretions, with finding a mate, reproducing, having kids that survive. Where do you get your food? What do you do when you get sick? I mean, nature, species have dealt with these issues since the beginning of life. And if we had a little more humility to go back to nature and say, how the hell did you deal with that issue of carbon? Like or nitrogen or whatever. I think then the technology could be very, very powerful. We tend to want to overpower it, but the example I give now about how we have to rethink things. The creation of these vaccines for COVID-19, absolutely astounding to me. I'm a scientist, and I've seen how revolutionary Pfizer and Moderna's technique is. But so now we're gearing up to inject how many? Several billion people. Every one of those injectors is going to be thrown away. I just it staggers me to think of the volume of waste that we're going to put out there, plastic and metal and whatever, and glass in the ampules. We can't go on acting as if our crisis now means you use the earth as a garbage can, and we can't live that way. And so even as we celebrate this incredible breakthrough with the COVID vaccines, it still is a part of what's destroying the planet.
And that's the thing. It's this, and that's what we're trying to do with these conversations is try to map out a mindset and a framework that works, and from soup to nuts, from the beginning to the end, right? And I do think when it comes to First Nations, what First Nations have you been working with, and what have they taught you that you bring home more specifically that you'd like to think about?
Well, my whole beginning in and everything I've learned basically about environmentalism was taught to me when I did. This is in the late 1970s. There was a battle over logging in the what was then called the Queen Charlotte Islands. Now it's called Haida Gwaii, which is the archipelago just south of the tip of the Alaskan Panhandle. So it's our westernmost archipelago, which have the biggest, the greatest biomass of any ecosystem on Earth. That is the weight of living things, and that's because we got big trees. So they've been logging the hell out of the Haida Gwaii, and I was asked to go and do a film about the confrontation over logging, environmentalists, and one of the leaders in that battle was a Haida. And I said to him, look, you have over 50% unemployment among your people, and a lot of the loggers are Haida. The non-Haida loggers come into your community, they go to your stores, they inject money into your communities. Why are you fighting against the logging? And he said, well, of course we'll still be here if they cut the trees down. And he thought and he said, then we'll just be like everybody else. And I thought, what the hell are you saying? And as I reflected on it, I realized what he said is to be who I am, to be a Haida, means to be connected in a way that the air, the water, the soil, the fish, the trees, all of that is what makes me who I am. So you cut down the trees, yeah, we'll still be here, but we won't be Haida because a huge part of, and that began my journey then. As a scientist, I wrote a book called Wisdom of the Elders, in which I tried to show that indigenous perspectives all over the world are validated by the best science. So Gujao, this teacher that taught me in Haida Gwaii, was saying we don't end at our skin or our fingertips. We're connected. And he's absolutely right. The air is in us, it's circulating through us. We are air. We are water that comes from the environment, and we are the soil through the food that we eat. We are the sunlight through all of the photosynthesis. We are created and survive by Mother Earth itself. So to call the Earth our mother is absolutely right. And we've got to learn about that. We've had a battle going on for years over fish farms. We're not against fish farms necessarily, but they're using the oceans as a garbage can because they're open nets. And that's all we've been saying is get those nets out of the water. That's all we're asking. We're not against the farming, but we're still using the oceans as a garbage can. And the consequences are devastating now.
So, from where you sit now and you're looking at what's happening, I know I always quote you actually all the time when you said once that you feel like you're stuck in a trunk of a car driven by drunk drivers.
I don't use that metaphor anymore.
You don't?
I use what's his name? The little bird that runs along, Roadrunner.
Ah,
You
and
remember Roadrunner?
yeah, of course. So what's the
Roadrunner,
new metaphor?
Roadrunner is being chased by Wile E. Coyote, comes to the edge of a cliff. Roadrunner does a 90-degree turn and takes off. Wiley has got so much momentum, he goes right over the edge of the cliff. And there's that moment when he's suspended going, oh my God, and then down. That's where we're at. We're over the edge. We've already, I mean, the impact on climate is undeniable. And even if we stopped all emissions today, the impact is going to reverberate for decades, if not centuries. So we've already started the experiment. And people then say, well, if it's too late, if we're over the edge, well, I think it makes a difference whether you fall, 5 or 10 feet down to a ledge, or whether you go the full 500 feet down to the bottom. And that's what I'm fighting for is to protect or try to lessen the distance we fall. But we're over the edge. And there are many scientists now who are saying, look, it's too late to avoid a catastrophic, well, basically civilization as we know it will disappear. And maybe there will be pockets of human beings surviving, but in a very primitive condition. I mean, there are just too many human beings taking too much out of the earth to sustain it. And it's not just climate, it's species extinction. It's the fact that the oceans that cover 70% of the planet have been trashed. Who could imagine that one species could trash the oceans? It's unbelievable. And the impact is going to go on. We're now discovering, of course, micro pieces of plastic in the air. We're breathing it in. We're drinking it out of our water. It's all throughout the oceans. The fish that we eat are loaded with the consequences of human industrialization. So we're over the edge.
It's funny. We laugh when we say that, and I do that all the time to cope, right? So how
Yeah.
do you how do you cope? Because I find myself saying things that are horrific, and I laugh. And so how do you cope? Given also that you were, I'm 53, and I think about the world as it was when and you're older than I am, And you've witnessed more of the destruction than I have. How have you dealt with that all this time?
Well, people ask us, me and my wife, all the time, well, how do you keep from being depressed? The fact is, we're depressed a lot. Fortunately, we usually are not synchronized. So when I get really down, she's there to kind of help me lift me up, and vice versa. But 3 years ago, our youngest daughter had twins, boy and a girl, and they came to live with us with their husband upstairs before they had the babies, and then they stayed with us for 2 years. Anyway, the babies were about 7 months old, and I was sitting there. The ladies are off cooking or getting dinner ready, and suddenly I began to weep. And they grabbed the babies, and they're going, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I wailed. I was totally inconsolable because these kids that were just the joy of my life, and I realized that if I really believe everything I'm saying, they don't have a chance. They're not going to live a full life. And I just wailed, and it's never happened before or since, but that was when I had to understand the real ramifications of everything I say. But I am I'm honored that they were born, and I will get everything out of them as I can. I'm at my cabin right now. We've been up here for months and enjoying. And I'll tell you, the I'm on the morning shift. I'm up at 6, and every morning I get them fed, uh, dressed, and we go out, rain or shine. And they don't know what I've witnessed disappear. They're discovering the world through the innocence of childhood. And so every day I go out with them, whether it's to the beach or into the forest here, or into this tide pool. I see what an incredible thing. When we catch snakes or frogs or salamanders, we got two salamanders the other day. We catch them, take pictures, and let them go, of course. Or moon snails and shrimp and hermit crabs, and the world is still diminished as it is through their eyes. It's wonderful. And so I'm determined to work as hard as I can to preserve and protect what there is left, and then hope that their job as they get older will be restoring much of what we've lost. That's going to be the challenge of their generation.
It's a sort of a dual existence where you have hope for the future and you also know that certain things are not going to be what they should be. And watching the decay of also social fabric has been brutal. And the pain and suffering of everybody
Yeah.
in our town, and the inequality, the income inequality, it,
It's
it
so
it's
it's
disgusting.
so brutal. We bow down before the economy, and yet the disparity between the bottom 50% that are really suffering under the lockdown, and the fact that the ultra rich have made trillions during the same time, that the stock market is at record heights, then don't people get it? This economic system we bought into is so screwed up, that we can't emerge out of this pandemic and go back to the old normal, because the old normal was not normal in the first place. And this is what excites me about, well, not only what Biden is doing now, but the whole idea of the Green New Deal, which is a very exciting, uh, positive transformation. We've got to work towards greater economic and ecological justice, and greater equity on the planet. I just heard 2 days ago Jeff Bezos is going to spend $500 million on a yacht, and this is the most revolting. One of the supporters of our foundation came to me, and he wanted me to help him take pictures because he's paid tens of millions of dollars to go into space as a tourist. And so he said, well, what can I do as an environmentalist? And I said, you're not an environmentalist, but the ultra rich think they can buy anything they want. And it's just sickening that they keep trying to outdo each other in this flagrant flaunting of that wealth.
It's disgusting.
It's it is. It
It's
is.
actually to the point of being sickening, and to the point where literally I can't even witness it in up close anymore, right? And I think that the anger and the suffering is also what caused the people to raid the Capitol. You know, I'm not sure if you saw the article about a lot of the people who were assaulting the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, were in debt, had been bankrupted, or had lost their homes. So I think it was something like 80% of the people that were involved that they knew of were financially wrecked, essentially. And so this whole, as you say, this whole system may be starting with this disconnection from context, disconnection from the earth, then disconnection from each other, all has led to this atomization of this individuality that's sort of competitive and destructive, and it's over. We're living the end of that. And I just hope we can somehow do that 5 foot landing on the ledge off the cliff. And I'm just wondering, what do you think the tenets are? How do we get out of this, David?
I don't know. I think we have to focus on local communities. That's where our survival is going to be, the local communities. I don't think you can run away from it because the systems themselves. To me, I'm putting all my hope in the next election, where I'm saying the followers of Greta, the power of Greta's message was that you couldn't accuse her of having some alternate, a vested interest in something else. The clarity of her message. We learn in school to take science seriously. I've read the science, and what scientists are saying is the way we're going, I have no future. I'd be more powerful than that. And it galvanized literally millions of young people around the world. And so, the COVID kind of seemed to puncture the balloon of that. I think it's still there, but we've been working with teenagers now who are part of that movement in Canada, and saying, look, there's an election coming up. You don't vote, but your mom and dad, your grandma and grandfather, your uncles and aunts, people that love you, have got to really get active and say, I don't care what party you're in, you say you want my vote. Where are climate change, species extinction, ocean degradation? Where are they in your list of priorities? Because if they aren't at the top of your list, forget it. I'm not going to vote for you. We've got to make these a central issue of our time, so that then it becomes non-political. When everybody is saying, yes, we've got to deal with climate, we've got to deal in a big way with climate, then it doesn't matter what party you're in, that we're united. So I'm supporting a man named Seth Klein. You should have him on your show. He's a campaigner from way back, but he's written a book called A Good War. And what he does is he looks at what Canada did when World War II happened. Now, we were part of the Commonwealth, so we went to war 2 years before the United States did. When the United Kingdom was at war with Germany. Canada, when the war began for us in 1939, was a rinky-dink country, 11 million people. The changes, we set up 28 what are called crown corporations. Uh, People were growing their own vegetables in victory gardens, paying for war bonds. It was a total involvement in this issue. And now we've got to use that as a model for what is possible in Canada. So I've been supporting Seth Klein in setting up what he calls a climate emergency unit, which is now going and trying to raise public awareness across the board. Climate change is not an environmental issue. We keep being shunted to the environment minister. Wait a minute now, the impact on climate, on transportation, on energy, it's on health, we're all involved. But I mean, that's the way it's got to go. We have to keep bringing everything together, and this is what the climate emergency unit is trying to do: bring together people from the health sector, from the social justice, all of these areas together and work out how we work together to deal with the issue of climate and the impact of
Yeah, I
climate.
love that mobilization concept because we have to do that, otherwise we won't make it through as well as we can.